AI is here. The question isn't whether to adapt, it's how. Welcome to AI Builds America, where we sit down with the leaders, innovators, and everyday professionals reshaping recruiting, workforce development, and career growth for an AI enabled future. I'm Candace Washburn, along with Melissa Salazar. Let's build. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. We are going to be discussing something that is near and dear to all of our hearts, and specifically diversity, bias, and fairness, just making AI work for equitable hiring. And this is obviously one of the most critical conversations in talent tech right now. So, how can AI both perpetuate and help reduce bias in hiring? So today I'm hopeful that we'll discuss some bias auditing, perhaps fairness metrics, how we design those AI systems that help promote the diversity and the regulatory considerations, such as most recently I read about the EU AI Act of the NYC's hiring law and how we're kind of introducing those guardrails. So with that, I'm so excited to present Winston Clements. And Winston he is a renowned motivational speaker. This is one of my life goals. He's also a TEDx speaker, a disability advocate who speaks on disability inclusion, resilience, and using AI for accessibility. Winston is also a former technology professional who has partnered with leading organizations and shared his story globally. Through lived experience and practical insight, he helps audiences lead with allyship, courage, and impact. Welcome, Winston. So happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm so glad we could finally make it happen.
We should tag on that you're also our friend.
Yes.
We're all friends there.
So excited to have you.
Thank you, guys.
So I guess I should just jump off. Melissa, I'm sure, we probably have equal amount of questions. And I'm so curious to know if we are talking about kind of the responsibility. I would love to know, in your opinion, Winston, where you think it actually lives. So like if an AI hiring tool produces a biased outcome, who owns that? Is it the vendor who built the model, the employer who deployed it? Is it the hiring manager who acted on it? I just would love to know your thoughts on the current landscape and like who we should assign that accountability to. If we do, like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, honestly, this is a really challenging question, which I struggle with. And I know that different communities and even different markets approach this differently. I think in the UK, for example, from my experience, it seems to be more of a responsibility lives across the chain type of thinking. But I know in other regions, and I'm sure you all can speak to a US perspective, I feel like it's quite specific to the employer or the vendor. In my opinion, and maybe this is a bit biased, and with my background, I feel like everyone should have a little bit of responsibility because I feel like when you have that ownership across the chain, then you're really able to assign specific accountability depending on probably not much goes wrong, but depending on what goes wrong in that process.
Yeah. I also feel like it's important everyone has a little bit of ownership because otherwise somebody's missing from the room always, right? Like some conversation is always happening and that's like the one person that's in charge of this wasn't there. So it's like when it's shared across a team of people or multiple stakeholders, then you can make sure somebody is always in the room to ensure that fairness is being built in.
Mm-hmm. And AI is always evolving. So I feel like the guardrails themselves are going to be, consistently shifting as well. And so it's like, do you appoint a team to be responsible for that specifically? Obviously, everybody takes shared ownership, but then what does that look like within an organization? Do they have their own compliance team specifically set for AI? Is it just something that you ensure regular touch points with your projects to an accountability team? It's just interesting. And I'd be curious to see like how they're going to identify that moving forward. Or like I said, it's always evolving. So things are constantly shifting, as you know.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that popped into my mind because prior to being in the advocacy world, I was actually a tech engineer, like you mentioned. And I'm even thinking about the different organizations that I worked for and the different projects that I was involved in building stuff for. And I guess I've seen it both ways, both as a across the chain thing or having a specific team within the organization that is the people that kind of give advice and governance as far as AI. And I've seen challenges with doing it both ways. So I guess when you have it across the chain, I feel like we touched on, it kind of brings everyone into the room, and that feels like a huge benefit. When I've seen it assigned to a particular team within that organization or a sub team, it feels like it, in my experience, maybe I just worked for some poor organizations or some challenging projects, but it feels like it always ends up being one of these, like just pointing fingers to
Right.
Whose
the
job
side.
is it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, well, if you had told us how to do it properly, then we wouldn't be in this kind of thing.
Right.
But that's just like a personal experience thing.
I know.
Yeah.
And I also feel like, don't you feel like, Winston, this is why it's important to hire people from communities that are underrepresented, and making sure you have the right people working for your company so
Mhm.
they can raise these issues and champion that.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah. And I feel like, especially coming from a lived experience perspective with a disability, I think some of those projects that I was brought on, I kind of ended up being like the de facto champion of disability, even though I only know
Yeah.
my own experience and I only know my own perspective. But I almost felt the pressure to speak for disability as a whole, which is like a huge community. Again, it's not just having people represented for the sake of tokenism, but it's actually having true diversity within even something like disability. Because as we know, for example, people can look at me and see that I use a power chair, and that's like, oh yeah, like he's literally the wheelchair symbol that we see all the time. But as we know, 80% of disabilities are non-apparent, so you're missing out a big chunk of people if you only have Winston speaking for them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And there's like consulting agencies you can pay to actually bring you that the broader disability experience, be able to speak to a lot of what that, what you need to build in your tools and systems to remove that bias, where like we can only talk about our individual experiences and what we know, right? So it's like, make sure you're bringing in the right agency or support when designing this. And like, Candace, I'm curious, what have
Mhm.
you run into this, like, in your experience? Like, how did you frame it up? Where, like, who did you appoint one person, or?
No, I worked within a large group across big tech, and that was like 12,000, TA professionals, right? So it was like anything that we built had to scale, but it was always we had, the governance, we had all of our guardrails laid out. I built workflows specifically for that.
Yeah.
But at what point, I guess, like, do you regulate like fairness, or can it even be engineered?
Yeah.
And so, you can include it in like the metrics or the demographic parity, like, you can predict whether or not things are going to be utilized in a real world scenario. So when a company says that they're hiring in AI specifically is fair, within diversity, like what are they actually optimized for? Who decided that initially? And so we as a team would provide our suggestions, our recommendations, but ultimately it was up to the hiring managers to make that decision. So it was kind of like it's a little bit of a cycle. And then to my point earlier, it's constantly evolving and shifting as well. So even if you are going to be responsible for, doing the audits, what does that bias audit look like specifically? I know that there's internal audits, but there's also third party audits. And is that kind of becoming the norm? It's very surface level. But what separates like that, I guess, meaningful audit from a checkbox exercise?
Yeah.
And then also, should candidates and regulators be able to see what the results are?
I
I
like
noticed
that.
lately, with applications, they'll have this is being monitored by AI, or they'll have some sort of, footnote as to that AI is being included into the application, and then you may receive a rejection within 24 hours. So you can't help but wonder, did a human actually even see the application? We don't know. Um, Probably not.
Probably not.
Considering,
Yeah.
Sometimes you get rejected like 10 seconds after you send it or
Yeah,
24 months later. Like, who knows?
right. And then I'd be really curious if you were to reach out to like someone on the hiring team and say, "Hey, listen, like I meet all of this criteria and these requirements. Why was my resume kicked back?" And chances are they might not even agree with AI.
Yeah.
So,
Good perspective.
Yeah, no, I agree as well, and I feel like that a lot of it exists in the black box at the moment, and I feel like a little bit more transparency would help. Even to your examples, Candice, just knowing even what the thought process was or what the logic flow
Mhm.
was for you to get that rejection. I think that would be super helpful, even as feedback, right? Because I mean, I
Yeah.
remember back in the day when you could apply for a job and actually call someone and ask them for the feedback if you got
Yeah.
rejection. So maybe these AI systems, they're super smart, so I'm pretty sure they can kind of give us something to help us understand how to navigate those processes a bit better.
I'm really curious though, like, how do you measure fairness? Like,
Yeah.
I think that is probably the
Yeah.
deepest conversation we could have right now. And probably
Mhm.
people tuning in are like, yeah, like that's the nuggets that we need to leave with of like, how do we design something? How do we determine what measures fairness? What is fairness? And then how do we
Mhm.
champion that across the business or across the company to make sure everybody's bought in on what that
Yeah.
means?
Yeah.
So either one of
Mhm.
you want to answer that.
Yeah. I mean, the thing
Mm,
that
go
pops to
ahead.
mind for me, which is, I guess, through my disability lens, is, one of the mantras within my world is nothing for us without us, which is, like a really big thing with a disability world because a lot of solutions are even built for people with disabilities without having them in the room, which, is just wild to say. And so just having, again, that representation of folks with different lived experiences in not just as end users, but also early on as developers, designers, testers, architects, and then also from an employment perspective, if it is a panel or if it is an AI system that was built, what this disability lived experience was coded into the algorithm, into the artificial intelligence as well. So that feels like
Mhm.
an obvious low hanging fruit that is obvious, but doesn't mean that everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
Right. I would be curious. I know obviously that New York has the guardrails and the parameters for AI applications and, enforcing that they're fair, quote unquote. But then not every state does, right? So do you create like a federal law that indicates that, if you're going to utilize AI in your application process, that, these metrics come back that are fair and equitable? So it's interesting. I don't know if that's something that anybody can answer at this point. And if they can, I'd be really curious to hear their perspective because I don't know. I immediately go to internal. So if you were to see from like a promotion aspect what those results look like, are they fair? To be able to measure that. I know that with, interviewing as a recruiter, you're supposed to different types of strategies on the front ends, but what about the
Yeah.
back ends? I'm not quite sure.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of teams have like an ethics or a compliance. Not a lot of teams, sorry. I don't feel like a lot of teams have ethics or
They
compliance.
should.
Big tech, right? Bigger
Yeah.
like large companies, but
Mhm.
mid-size to smaller companies are
Yeah.
not going to have a compliance or an ethics team. So it's like how do
Mhm.
they tackle it? Cuz to me this would be just a conversation between legal, ethics,
Yeah.
Mhm.
compliance, and then also your HR team of like how do we measure fairness? How do we build this in? How do we ensure we're like, yes, the law is great, but how do we go a step above that? Because eventually the law is going to, you know, just get bigger and bigger.
I will say that there's always moving goalposts. I know I've said that before.
Yes.
So it's like, how do you stay on top of that? And with the legal system in general, they just need to create they need to get on the fast track with these AI laws. There's so many things that are happening, even with OpenAI. I mean, there's all of, they're always in the news. And of course, you've seen it across the board with other AI companies. There just wasn't enough like foundational guardrails to begin with in terms of
Yeah.
privacy regulations. And now you're seeing I guess it's like a volcanic effect, right? To where it's like it's just out in the open, it's there, and everybody's got data that they're inputting into the universe, and it's being utilized to train, right? So it's just it all came out of nowhere.
I think I've even seen job titles that are like, this is their job, is to determine what the parameters are and like set it for the company. Like
Right.
that's their sole job, is just to work on their AI fairness
Yeah.
and governance.
Mhm. I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, what popped to mind as you were both speaking was maybe like some different, I guess, high level things that could be measured, even just on a basic logic level, ensuring we have fairness at individual level. So if you have two individuals who have kind of a similar background, are they getting a similar end result type of thing? Again, kind of moving from the individual maybe to something that is more group based. So, if you have different demographic groups, let's say ethnicity or gender or disability, whatever it is, how are they receiving, if it's benefits, if it's employments, if it's services, does that feel fair compared to other groups, not the same group? And then also as you think about the biases, maybe more from a technology level, I think these machines they're really smart. I mean, it's artificial intelligence. Going back to that age old thing of what does a data set look like that they're learning from? Who's really like ensuring the integrity of that data? Because that's a big part of how they build those biases as well. Pretty huge seismic conversations that we're having here, I think.
I have a thought here too. A lot of people say that AI is replacing jobs, and a lot of companies are saying, okay, how do we outsource to AI to scale our business? But the more you implement AI, the more you realize you need more people to oversee the AI that you're implementing. So it's like I've seen a lot of companies downsize their workforce or remove very low level tasks and move it to AI, but then they have to bring a team in to then audit all of the work that tool is doing. And so just I don't know, it's like, is this counterproductive sometimes? Because like we're having to brainstorm and solve problems that we never had before because we've introduced a tool that's supposed to make our lives easier. But like the deeper we get in this conversation, it doesn't feel like it's easy at all.
I personally feel like it's always going to augment, and this is the time to really like get on board and to learn as much as you can about it.
Yeah,
Whether that's reading, if you want to take your certifications or your classes. I know a lot of companies have that. As a requirement at this point. You have to like log a certain amount of hours, or
right.
you have to utilize AI specifically for a certain amount of time. Like I know Amazon was just doing that. And then they ended up shutting it down, because it wasn't necessarily like people were just using it for the sake of using it, but
Yeah.
there was like no output from it. So
Right.
I know that it's just different across the board.
And I feel like, how many people do you think go into AI and they're like, write my governance for me too,
Oh, yeah.
like
No,
using
definitely.
AI to audit AI and like layer
Yeah.
on layer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just interesting.
Chasing its tail.
Yeah, and I think like I feel like program leaders or TA leaders,
Mhm.
HR leaders, they're like, like you were saying, Candace, who owns this and who do we hold responsible, right? When something's
Mhm.
not working or when some bias enters into the system, and how do we really know how to remove it or
Mhm.
identify it? And so,
That's
do you think that's like outsourcing? Do you think you outsource that, have an agency come in and run audits for you? Do you think that you just have to build a team? Or I know, Winston, you were kind of saying it could be part of everyone's job, but I mean, like the actual auditing, that sounds like a big responsibility to have to audit all of that and make sure that nothing is sneaking in there unfairly.
Yeah, and the thing that popped to my mind as you were saying that is, I think there's also a pretty huge variance between industries. So I know you mentioned you both actually have worked in big tech, but I also know that there's other industries that are like super risk averse, for example. So I've done different jobs for, let's say banking, for example, or certain like insurance companies, and they're hesitant to use AI at all.
Yeah.
Like
yes.
it's scary for them to even use the tools that most of us are using every day. So to your point, on auditing, I guess a big part of it would depend on like the risk appetite and how much people are using AI in a day-to-day basis will then determine what kind of audit that they need to have in place. If it's like agency that's coming from outside or something that's within the team. I feel like if you're more on the risk averse end, then I feel like they'll be hesitant to let someone in to kind of poke around and see what they do, versus
Yeah.
someone who's maybe or an industry that's more progressive, like big tech or startup, where it probably would make sense to have like a agency to come in and be that second check for
Yeah.
you. Or that's one way that I'm thinking about it as we speak.
I also wonder if it would make sense to have a tiger team and you just follow the candidate journey.
Yeah.
And, at each touch point, you log that data because how else will you know unless you're really following along so closely?
True.
So that's like all that you're dedicated to? I think that
Well,
would probably be helpful.
I love that idea. I feel like in one of my previous roles, like we had an accessibility like tiger team across
Mhm.
talent, HR, and talent operations. And then we just reviewed everything together. We get together quarterly and be like, what do we think about the X, Y, and Z? How can we improve it? How do we make sure our systems are saying the same thing? But another thing I was thinking about, and Candace, you brought this up, with the candidate experience, but also like the volume of people applying with AI, right? Like
Yeah.
mass applying to jobs, one, and then the volume of applicants that HRS systems or applicant tracking systems are receiving. It's just not humanly possible to review that much talent. And you've got to think like
Mhm.
all of these, it's very flawed right now, right? Like, I mean, I
Yeah.
think everybody has an example of I didn't get through, but I was a perfect fit and I was one of 5 million applicants or whatever it is, right? So it's like, what could companies do today? Not to like boil the ocean because there's way too much data and applicants right in the system, but like how do they kind of cut through the noise? Like what's one or two things they could do to cut through the noise today to start working towards wrapping their arms around the candidate experience, like Candace, like you're saying, because I feel like a lot of applicants aren't even getting an experience because you're just stuck at the gate.
Mhm. I mean,
Winston's laughing.
I just go right to the interview stage, so I'll just
Yeah.
let Winston, because I do have an idea, but it's more so for the interview stage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
hmm hmm Yeah. No, I think the thing that comes to my mind is it's maybe a little bit left field, and I don't know if that I've seen this, in practice in many places, but I like the idea of having, the target team that follows the entire candidate experience. And it just made me think, like how feasible would it be to just have that kind of personalized approach? Because one of the big benefits of having AI is that it should be personalizing our experiences, right? And so if we were able to build a tool or build in features into a process like recruitment and hiring, that would almost kind of be, I'm almost thinking like, and I could be inventing something here, but kind of like your personal coach in that experience. So as you're applying, for that role, or as you're getting to the interview stage, first round, second round, whatever the system is, not only having the AI that receives the application and qualifies or disqualifies you, but also having almost like a widget or a thing on the side that is like your coach and kind of gives you direction, which again, it might require that transparency from what is behind the black box so that the coach what advice to give you. But it's just something that I haven't seen done much, and I feel like that would be a good way to create that kind of
Yeah, good
equity
experience.
and transparency that feels a bit more equitable, if that makes sense.
I
Yeah, and
like
then on the
that.
reverse
Mhm.
end, from a candidate perspective, you could use that little coach to provide feedback. So instead of having an
Right.
actual human person, it would be AI specific, and then, human in the loop would review it and then collect that data, develop insights and forecast from there.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, I love that because it's like so much data is in the system, but how are companies leveraging it today to truly understand what type, like who's applying, why are we getting this volume of talent, what
Yeah.
could we change in our job description, what could we change so we're not attracting so many people and we're attracting
Mhm,
the people we need to
Right.
do this job.
mhm.
And again, I have seen so many canned responses. Like, and I'm like, you have this whole AI process on the front end to like screen applicants, but then you don't have like Candace, like you're saying, the personalized, like, hey, this is why you didn't make it through X, Y, and Z, blah,
Yeah.
blah, whatever, right? Like, you would think that would be so easy to just
Yeah.
build something like that that could give feedback. But I also feel like there's that risk of like, what type of feedback is it going to give? And you don't want to have like an issue with discrimination,
Right.
or and so you really have to audit like how, or design how that's going to respond, so it doesn't
Right.
accidentally
Yeah.
feed the candidate the wrong information. And then you have a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anybody done an AI interview?
Yes.
Okay. What is your experience with that? Because I'll tell you mine, but I'm curious to hear yours.
I can't wait for the people who heard mine to watch this, because I had to text my friends and be okay. It was the worst situation. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I got this little thing saying, "Oh, you have an interview." And so I thought it was like AI, as in like a chat. So I clicked on it and it started recording me. And then I was like, no, wait, I'm not ready, And then it's recording everything I'm saying, and I flubbed the whole thing. It was so bad. And I
Oh,
like,
no.
It's so good though.
and I hung up, and I thought it like completely hung up, but I guess it still records for like a 1 or 2 seconds. So then I'm like, oh, this is so frustrating. And I had to email the agency and they said everybody was dying of laughter. That was the funniest thing. They knew I obviously was having technical difficulties. I was like, great. So
I
that's
know.
been my experience. It was absolutely horrible.
It's rough. No, it's supposed to be seamless, but it's not a good experience,
No.
It really needs to iron itself out.
I was so stressed. Like I
Yeah.
was literally so stressed because I
Yes.
was like, I can't make a mistake.
Yes. Mine was the same. So I didn't realize it was going to start immediately when you click on the link.
Yes.
And I'm in the car. My daughter is at her vocal lessons, and I'm not prepared to do the interview. I was just trying to see what I needed to prepare
Right.
for. And it was like 3, 2, 1. I'm like, "Ugh." And so, of course, you get one more try. So then I click on that link. It didn't work. So then I had to email them and say, hey,
No.
my link's not. Oh, it was. And then the actual interview happens and it goes by so quick. And you're like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, that's it. I for sure am like moving on to the next. That was awesome. I did so good. And then you get the rejection, it's like that whole experience was miserable
No,
anyways.
it's
And
so bad. And I
Wow.
feed off of people's energy, right? Like
right.
Yeah.
I need to have a
Yes.
Balance.
conversation, and I obviously I chat a lot because I process out loud. So it was really stressful because
Yeah.
there's no connection. There's absolutely no personalization.
100%.
It's just like asking the next question. And I was still like stuck on, why are you recording me right
I
now?
know.
Yeah. So
I
what
actually
do you
love
actually
to do
see on the
that.
other side? Do you see like a face,
You
or is it just
offended? Oh,
audio?
No, it's just like, actually, I'm trying to remember. No, it's just written like
yeah.
text. And then
Yeah.
Oh,
you're speaking, and then it synthesizes, or not synthesizes, but it like transcribes what you say. So it's
got it.
really stressful because then you're reading what you just said. And it's like, for
Oh,
somebody with ADHD, it was the absolute worst experience. Like
There's just a
I
lot going on.
don't
Yeah.
recommend it for neurodivergent people.
No. I don't recommend it. And then the company that shall not be mentioned made this post about how efficient it's been for them.
mm.
And I was like, can I
What
add
type
my
of
feedback
efficiency?
here? Because it was
I would be so like, what we should message them and be like, I'm curious to understand that efficiency, and then invite somebody onto our podcast, because I'd love to hear what is efficient
yeah.
about it. Like just from
Yeah.
a time
Yeah.
perspective, because I think
Mhm.
and I guess, Candace, we have live user experience, but I know like at
Yeah.
least 7 or 8 of my other friends who have also said the same exact
Mm.
thing. It's just
Mhm.
so stressful. So I'd
Yeah.
be curious what the real everybody listening, drop your information below of like, have you done one? Did you like it? Was it efficient?
Yeah.
Right.
No, that
And I
sounds
will
rough.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, no, for sure. Tying it back to what can companies do. So from an interview perspective, I think that it would be helpful for them to create scripts that remove AI speak. And so what I mean by that is like when you're talking to candidates, a lot of them will utilize AI to prep, which is great, but
Yep.
you're getting a lot of
Yeah.
AI responses. So then how do you dive further and get answers that only are human centered versus just what the AI output is? And I think that companies probably, should be ensuring that they have some sort of workflow or template or whatever they're going to utilize that weeds out those candidates for a fairness, I guess, metric, if you wanted to include that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that. It's also interesting that AI still speaks like AI when that's like the number
Yeah.
one way that people identify, because it's like
Yeah.
you can design how it responds, but everybody kind of uses it like it's M dashes, comparative language,
Right.
very
I've
dramatic.
always used them though, and now I can't because
I
now I feel like
I love M dash, but the little M dash, not like the long one. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the way that AI speaks, I'm gonna be honest with you, is like my corporate speak. So for me, it's not that far off. Like, I feel like maybe I am AI, I don't know,
Oh
but
my gosh. Wait,
I
are
don't
you real?
I don't feel completely uncomfortable with it, like, to help
Yeah.
write narratives. I will obviously change it up to make it a little bit more personable, but for the most part, I kinda like its output, and maybe it's just the prompt that I'm using. I know
Mm.
we speak
Yeah.
to that on another, episode of just prompt engineering and, ensuring that you're putting in the right input to get the correct output, and so I always ask it to add the human element, like, act as a human editor is,
Yeah.
like, the
I do
beginning of
that.
my prompts, so I don't know, and then
Or
when
I
it's
pick a famous person who speaks really well and I'm like, what would they say about
listening,
this? Yeah.
who's your
Yeah.
top? Is it like,
It's
who is
Candace
it?
Washburn.
I feel like Meryl Streep would provide some good
Oh, I
you
love that. I
know?
usually do like CMOs. I'm like, what would the CMO say or the
Oh, okay,
CEO
okay,
say? Yeah.
you're right.
Wait,
Be
fun
professional.
fact.
Mhm.
Winston and I, we built something together.
Tell
We
me about
did.
it.
We
We did. It's
did.
not lunch because then, life happened and like, we haven't gotten back together, but we were like
Oh,
solving challenges. And so, speaking of fairness and governance, I don't know,
yeah,
Winston, you could share a little. Don't, we can't tell you the whole thing yet, but
Am
okay.
I under NDA, Melissa?
yes, no. I mean, we signed it
Speaking
together.
code. Mhm.
Yeah, I guess the problem that we were trying to solve was the one about thinking, particularly with ERGs and the challenges that can exist in standing up at ERG, which you probably both experienced working for big corporations. And one of the biggest things is that typically, even in big companies, they're kind of headed up by one person, or it's one person that is the subject matter expert for these things. And
Yeah.
so when that person kind of moves on or gets promoted or has a baby or whatever, goes traveling
Mhm.
forever, they,
Forever.
they,
Sabbatical.
the ERG is no longer able to stand up on its own. And so one of the things that we were exploring was could we kind of create a tool that helps to build some of that governance so that the ERG doesn't live within the brain of one person. It can become something
Shared
that's
responsibility.
standardized. Yeah.
Mhm.
Explored it in different ways, but one of the first things that we've created is a checklist, which is like an initial diagnosis, which allows people to kind of I guess, diagnose and assess where they're at with that ERG. Is it true that it all exists in Sally's inbox and that you need to kind of create some processes around it? Or, are you actually pretty well organized and you have strong governance, or are you somewhere in between? So it kind of
Mhm.
creates that scale, which is like the start of the conversation. And then that then creates a path forward as to where are you having some missing rungs in your ladder and how can we support you to get those in?
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's like kind of reminds me, Candace, of what you were saying about like
Mhm.
building.
The
uh,
dashboard?
Yeah. Just
Yes. So I'm going to tell you really quickly that I tried to build a dashboard that indicated, like, for each ERG, what specific initiative were they successful at that tied to business goals or objectives, so that others ERGs can utilize it.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. Is it the recruiting intake form? Is it a certain dashboard that they're utilizing? Is it like these virtual lounges? Like, whatever the initiative is, everything could be displayed. And the user experience is you go on, you kind of see a graph show what the metrics look like, how successful it was within that ERG, and perhaps you can utilize it for your own team. Well, the problem I ran into is that not all ERGs are as responsible as they should be with, like, tracking, and there was just data all over the place, but it
Yeah.
wasn't there was no rhyme or reason. It wasn't, filtered, or organized for that matter. So it was a really good idea, but unfortunately, it just didn't come to fruition because of that. And I feel like it happens in a lot of
Yeah.
companies,
Well, it's
unfortunately.
also because like ERG leads, I mean, they're volunteer, like they have a
Yeah.
Yeah.
full-time role, and then
Yeah.
it's hard. So having a tool that could help them with collecting this and like,
Hmm.
building the system so then the dashboard could work. Oh, look at,
Yeah.
maybe we could,
Ta-da.
you guys, I'm so sorry. I can't see because the sun is like that one time. So
It's
maybe this
totally
is
good.
the,
This is our cue.
this is
Nope.
our cue, closing
I get
time.
it. Well, I appreciate you so much today, Winston. Very insightful, very helpful, and I've learned a lot. And Melissa, you, as always, such a fabulous co-host, and I hope you both have a great evening. I don't know if you have any parting words. Thank you again, Winston.
Yeah, no, you guys are doing an amazing job with this podcast. I've been able to watch a couple of the episodes, so I appreciate what you all are doing in kind of bringing this conversation to the masses. And I know AI can be one of those topics that feels a little bit like Marmite, like people either love it or hate it. But I always encourage people to, you know, just experiment a little bit with some of the tools yourself, and also focus on one specific part of your workflow. So I know a lot of your audience are probably in hiring and recruitment and that kind of thing. To use Melissa's word, you don't have to boil the entire ocean, but see if it can help you with one little thing that you might be struggling with,
Yeah,
and then build from there.
I love that.
Yeah, I think the future of the workforce is an entire episode podcast in itself.
Wait,
So
coming
Yeah,
part
soon?
two.
Coming soon?
Yeah.
When the
Yeah.
sun is not in my eyes. Apparently
Yeah.
this is also a good time to remind people to buy blinds.
You look like an angel,
I was like,
Melissa.
you
"Oh,
do.
thank you."
Yeah,
I can't see anything, but here we are.
we
Yeah.
see
Well,
you. Yeah,
yeah. Thank you, Winston. As always, it's such a pleasure. And Candace, you do an amazing job putting these together. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you
appreciate
both.
you.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye. That's a wrap on today's episode of AI Builds America. If this conversation sparked something in you, share it. Someone in your network needs to hear it. Subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you next time. Keep building.